Welcome to our channel. Today we're talking about the book A Year of Positive Thinking by Cyndie Spiegel. And hey, if you're loving this deep dive into positivity and want even more, check out Affirmifyjourney.com for personalized affirmations based on your zodiac sign, plus tons more motivational content. Now, this book isn't your typical self-help read. It's structured like a daily companion with entries for each day of the year.
It's almost like she's holding your hand and guiding you through a year-long transformation, one day at a time.
Right. And she doesn't just throw out vague positivity. She digs into specific concepts and exercises that can really shift your perspective. One that grabbed me right away is in the very first entry, January 1st, right where you should be.
I think that's so powerful because so many of us are constantly striving for something more, something different, and we end up resisting the present moment.
Totally. We're always thinking, I'll be happy when. But Spiegel challenges us to embrace where we are right now, even if it's messy or uncomfortable. How do you think someone could apply this right where you should be concept to their own life?
Well, imagine you're feeling stuck in a job you hate. Instead of dwelling on the negativity, what if you asked yourself, what can I learn from this experience? Or what opportunities are hidden within this challenge?
It's about shifting your focus from what's wrong to what you can learn and grow from.
Right. Exactly. It's not about settling or resigning yourself to a bad situation. It's about finding the strength and the wisdom within the present moment.
And this idea of finding strength in unexpected places reminds me of the Japanese art of kintsukuroi that she talks about on January 2nd. You know, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, making the cracks part of the beauty.
It's a beautiful metaphor for how our perceived flaws and setbacks can actually become sources of strength and resilience.
It's like those cracks aren't something to hide. They're part of what makes us unique and beautiful.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the concept of impermanence that Spiegel introduces on January 4th, it adds another layer of depth.
Because both the good and the bad times are fleeting.
Precisely. Knowing that nothing lasts forever can be a source of comfort when you're going through a tough time.
It's like, okay, this too shall pass.
But it's also a reminder to savor the good times because they won't last forever either.
So how can someone use this knowledge of impermanence to deal with, let's say, a major disappointment?
Imagine you've just experienced a painful breakup. It's natural to feel heartbroken and lost. But remembering that this feeling won't last forever can offer a glimmer of hope. It allows you to grieve and process the pain without getting completely swallowed by it.
It's like acknowledging the pain without letting it define you.
Exactly. And it also reminds you that new opportunities for love and connection will eventually arise, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment.
And this whole idea of impermanence really ties into the importance of letting go of expectations, which Spiegel talks about on January 7th.
Expectations can be real joy stealers. When we cling too tightly to how we think things should be, we set ourselves up for disappointment.
It's like we're creating a rigid script for our lives, and then we get frustrated when things don't go according to plan.
Right. So much of our suffering comes from that resistance to what is. But when we surrender to the present moment and let go of those rigid expectations, we create space for something new to emerge.
And she has this great anecdote about the two women asking about the community on January 13th that really illustrates this point.
Oh, yes. The one where both women ask about the type of people who live in a particular town, but their preconceived notions shape the answers they receive. It's fascinating how our perceptions can become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Totally. The woman who expected the residents to be mean received confirmation of her bias, while the woman who believed in people's inherent goodness received a completely different response.
It's a powerful reminder that we often find what we're looking for, whether it's the good or the bad. So why not choose to look for the good?
And speaking of looking for the good, Spiegel is a huge advocate for practicing gratitude. On January 31st, she even introduces a 10-day gratitude challenge.
It's not just about feeling grateful. It's about making it a daily practice. She suggests writing down what you're grateful for each day, and even encourages sharing those lists with others to amplify the positive effects.
Yeah, I'm curious, have you ever tried a gratitude practice? What was your experience like?
Oh, absolutely. I find that taking just a few minutes each day to reflect on what I'm grateful for really shifts my perspective. It's like hitting a reset button on my mind, helping me to focus on the good instead of getting bogged down by the negative.
It's like training your brain to look for the positives instead of automatically focusing on what's missing or wrong.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that gratitude has been shown to have tangible benefits for both our mental and physical health.
So it's not just about feeling good. It's actually good for you.
Precisely. It's been linked to lower levels of stress, improved sleep, and even a stronger immune system.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think it ties in beautifully with another major theme in the book,
Yeah.
which is self-love.
Yes. This emerges strongly in February. One quote that really struck me is from February 1st. You are the one you've been waiting for.
It's like a wake-up call to stop searching for external validation and start recognizing our own inherent worth.
Exactly. We often spend so much time seeking love and approval from others that we forget to love and accept ourselves.
And this is where her Manifesto for a Life Well Lived comes in.
Right.
It's from February 2nd, and encourages readers to embrace their individuality and do what brings them joy,
Yeah.
even if it goes against societal norms.
It's about giving yourself permission to be your authentic self, quirks and all.
And this Be Yourself message connects to another really interesting point she makes on February 8th about the power of language,
Yeah.
especially how we talk to ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. The words we use shape our reality. Negative self-talk can be incredibly destructive. But when we consciously choose more positive and empowering language, we start to see ourselves and the world differently.
It's like we're constantly telling ourselves stories.
Hmm.
And we have the power to choose whether those stories are supportive or self-sabotaging.
Exactly. And this isn't just about positive affirmations. It's about noticing those subtle ways we talk to ourselves throughout the day and gently shifting those patterns.
So if someone tends to beat themselves up over mistakes, what's a practical way to start changing that inner dialogue?
Instead of saying things like, I'm so stupid or I always mess things up, try reframing those thoughts with more compassion. Maybe something like, okay, I made a mistake, but everyone makes mistakes. What can I learn from this?
It's about treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer to a friend.
And right, absolutely. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes.
So we've talked about embracing the present moment, finding strength in imperfections, letting go of expectations, practicing gratitude, and cultivating self-love. These are some pretty powerful concepts.
They are. And I think what's so brilliant about Spiegel's approach is that she doesn't just present these ideas in a theoretical way. She provides practical tools and exercises that you can actually implement in your daily life.
Yeah, she really gives you a roadmap for cultivating a more positive mindset. It's not just about reading the book, it's about putting these principles into practice.
Exactly. And that's where the real transformation happens.
This is all so fascinating, and there's so much more to unpack. We've just scratched the surface of what Spiegel explores in A Year of Positive Thinking. But before we dive into the next layer, let's take a quick break.
It's amazing how quickly these small shifts in mindset can start to make a difference.
It's true. And one of the things I really appreciate about this book is that Spiegel doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. In fact, on April 17th, she dives right into a concept that might seem counterintuitive at first. Breakdowns can lead to breakthroughs.
This idea really resonates with me. So often we try to avoid pain and discomfort, but sometimes those difficult experiences are exactly what we need to grow and evolve.
It's like that saying, sometimes you have to break down to break through.
Exactly, and this links back to the Kintsukuroi concept we discussed earlier. Sometimes we need to shatter those old limiting beliefs and patterns in order to rebuild ourselves stronger and more resilient.
So how can someone apply this breakdowns to breakthroughs idea in a practical way?
Well, imagine you're going through a job loss. It can feel devastating, like your whole world is falling apart. But instead of getting stuck in the despair, what if you saw this as an opportunity to reassess your priorities and pursue a career path that truly aligns with your passions?
It's about finding the opportunity within the challenge.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's not about minimizing the pain or pretending everything is okay. It's about recognizing that even in those moments of darkness, there's potential for growth and transformation.
And sometimes that transformation involves facing some pretty uncomfortable emotions,
Yeah.
like shame, which Spiegel addresses on June 6th.
She offers a really interesting perspective on shame, suggesting that it can actually be transformed into a source of strength.
I'm curious to hear more about that. How can shame be a source of strength?
Well, instead of trying to suppress or deny our shame, which often just makes it more powerful, Spiegel suggests leaning into it and using it as fuel for positive action.
Can you give an example of what that might look like?
Sure. Imagine you've made a mistake that you feel deeply ashamed of. Instead of letting that shame consume you, you could use it as motivation to make amends. Learn from the experience and commit to doing better in the future.
It's about taking responsibility for your actions and using those experiences as catalysts for growth.
Right. Precisely. And this connects to her point on September 9th about speaking our truth authentically. even when it's difficult or makes us vulnerable.
Because sometimes speaking our truth involves acknowledging those parts of ourselves that we might feel ashamed of.
Exactly. It's about embracing our whole selves, the light and the shadow, and recognizing that even those parts of ourselves that we might try to hide can be sources of strength and connection.
And this leads to another important theme that's woven throughout the book, letting go. On August 13th, she talks about releasing what no longer serves us. And on November 21st, she emphasizes the importance of forgiveness, even when it's hard.
Forgiveness is such a powerful act of self-compassion.
Mm.
It doesn't mean condoning the action or forgetting the pain, but it does free us from the burden of carrying that resentment and anger.
It's about choosing peace over bitterness.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. And it's not always easy. Sometimes forgiveness is a process that takes time and effort. But ultimately, it's about freeing ourselves from the past so we can move forward with more lightness and joy.
And speaking of moving forward, I think one of the most powerful messages in the book is about the importance of shifting our perspective. On October 8th, she talks about how changing our perspective can completely transform our experience of a situation.
It's like putting on a new pair of glasses and seeing the world in a completely different light.
It's true. And sometimes that shift in perspective is all it takes to turn a negative experience into a positive one.
Absolutely. And she gives so many practical tips for cultivating that perspective shift. Things like practicing gratitude, focusing on what we can control, and remembering that everything is temporary.
And this ties into her point on February 19th about the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who speak truth to our bullshit, as she puts it.
Yes, it's so valuable to have those trusted friends or mentors who are willing to call us out lovingly when we're stuck in negative patterns or letting fear hold us back.
It's about having that support system that helps us stay accountable to our highest selves.
Exactly. And it's not always easy to hear those truths, but it's essential for growth.
It's like having a mirror held up to us, reflecting those blind spots that we might not be able to see on our own. And speaking of reflecting, one of the things that really struck me about this book is how Spiegel encourages us to take responsibility for our own happiness.
That's so crucial. We often fall into the trap of thinking that happiness is something that happens to us. But she reminds us that it's something we create through our thoughts, actions, and choices.
On January 8th, she really drives home the point that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can control how we respond. And that's where our true power lies.
It's about recognizing that we have agency in our own lives, even when circumstances feel challenging or unfair.
And this connects to another powerful concept she introduces on March 27th, the idea that we teach others how to treat us.
This is all about setting boundaries, respecting ourselves, and communicating our needs clearly.
It's about recognizing our own worth and not settling for anything less than we deserve in our relationships.
Absolutely. And it's not about being demanding or difficult. It's about having a healthy sense of self-respect
Yeah.
and honoring our own needs and limits.
And this leads us to another crucial aspect of self-care, recognizing that we can't pour from an empty cup. She touches on this on April 23rd, reminding us that we need to prioritize our own well-being in order to show up fully for others.
It's so easy to get caught up in taking care of everyone else and neglect our own needs. But as she points out, we're not able to give our best to others when we're running on empty ourselves.
It's like trying to drive a car with an empty gas tank. You're not going to get very far.
Exactly. So what are some ways listeners can make sure they're filling their own cups?
Well, it looks different for everyone, but it could involve things like getting enough sleep, eating nourishing foods, moving your body, spending time in nature, or engaging in creative activities.
It's about figuring out what brings you joy and making sure you're incorporating those activities into your life regularly.
And it's not selfish to prioritize self-care. It's actually essential for our well-being and our ability to show up for the people we love.
Absolutely. And I think this ties into her message about finding joy in the simple things, which she refers to as extraordinarily simple on August 7th.
It's so easy to get caught up in striving for something bigger and better that we forget to appreciate the beauty and wonder that already exists in our lives.
Right. And I think this is a great reminder as we head into the holiday season, which can be a time of heightened stress and pressure. It's important to make time for those moments of joy and connection, whether it's spending time with loved ones, enjoying a favorite holiday tradition, or simply taking a few moments to appreciate the beauty of the season.
I love that. And it reminds me of her suggestion on October 9th to experience life through the lens of a tourist.
Ah, yes. That's a fantastic way to cultivate a sense of wonder and appreciation for the everyday things that we often take for granted.
It's about seeing the world with fresh eyes, noticing the beauty in the ordinary, and finding those little sparks of joy in unexpected places.
And it can be as simple as taking a different route to work, trying a new restaurant, or striking up a conversation with a stranger.
It's about being present and engaged in the world around us. And speaking of being present, Spiegel also talks about the importance of letting go of the need to control everything. On September 27th, she reminds us that life will happen, whether we control it or not, and that the only thing we can really control is our own attitude and response.
It's about embracing the unexpected and finding ways to enjoy the ride, even when things don't go according to plan. And this connects to the concept of impermanence that we talked about earlier. Knowing that nothing lasts forever can be freeing in a way.
Absolutely. It allows us to let go of the need to cling to things and instead appreciate each moment as it comes. And it also reminds us to give ourselves permission to dream big, like she mentions on August 19th.
She reminds us that we're capable of so much more than we often realize, and that it's important to nurture those dreams and not let them fade away.
It's about taking those dreams seriously
Yeah.
and not dismissing them as unrealistic or unattainable.
And it's also about recognizing that achieving those dreams is a process. And it's okay if it takes time.
It's about enjoying the journey and celebrating the small wins along the way. And sometimes that journey involves making mistakes, which she talks about on September 20th.
She reminds us that mistakes are an inevitable part of life, and that they're actually essential for growth.
It's about shifting our perspective on failure and seeing it as an opportunity to learn and improve, rather than something to be ashamed of.
And she also emphasizes the importance of self-forgiveness. We're all going to make mistakes, and it's crucial to be able to offer ourselves compassion and grace, rather than dwelling on those past missteps.
It's about letting go of the need to be perfect
Yeah.
and embracing our imperfections as part of what makes us unique. And this brings us to another important topic.
Boundaries.
Yes. On July 14th, she points out that healthy boundaries teach people how to treat us. And that's such an important reminder.
It's about recognizing that it's okay to prioritize our own well-being, and that we don't have to say yes to everything.
And I think this is a particularly challenging concept for women, because we're often conditioned to be accommodating and put the needs of others before our own. It's about breaking free from those societal expectations and honoring our own needs and limits.
And this ties into her message about the power of self-respect. On November 16th, she quotes Joan Didion, who said, "To free us from the expectations of others to give us back to ourselves, there lies the singular power of self-respect."
That's such a beautiful quote. It reminds me of her point on February 12th about choosing your own family. We're not limited to the family we're born into. We have the power to create a support system that truly nourishes and uplifts us.
That's such an important message, especially in today's world where so many people are feeling isolated and disconnected.
It's about being intentional, about cultivating those meaningful relationships and recognizing that we have the power to choose who we let into our lives.
And this ties into her point on February 17th about friendship as soulmates.
It's about finding those people who we can be completely ourselves with, those who see and love us for who we truly are.
And it's about allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and to receive that love and support in return.
It's a beautiful cycle, and I think it's something we could all benefit from cultivating more in our relationships.
Absolutely. It's about creating those safe spaces where we can be seen, heard, and accepted for who we truly are, imperfections and all.
And I think this leads to another really important concept that Spiegel emphasizes throughout the book, the power of positive self-talk.
Yes. On September 12th, she talks about how the most important conversations we have are the ones we have with ourselves. And that's so true.
It's about being mindful of the stories we're telling ourselves and making sure those stories are empowering and supportive, rather than critical and self-defeating.
And she offers practical tips for cultivating more positive self-talk, such as challenging negative thoughts, focusing on our strengths, and practicing gratitude for all that's good in our lives.
It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and compassion that we would offer to a dear friend.
And this is a practice, not a one-time fix. It takes time and effort to shift those deeply ingrained patterns of negative self-talk, but it's so worth it.
It's about rewiring our brains for greater optimism and self-love.
Exactly. And I think this ties into another powerful concept that comes up in the book, the idea that we can choose happiness, even when circumstances are difficult.
On August 3rd, she really drives home the point that we have the power to choose our attitude in every moment, and that choosing happiness is a practice that requires conscious effort.
It's about recognizing that happiness isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we cultivate through our thoughts, actions, and choices.
And this is so empowering because it means that we're not at the mercy of our circumstances.
Right. And she offers practical strategies for cultivating happiness, such as focusing on what we're grateful for, surrounding ourselves with positive people, and making time for activities that bring us joy.
She also talks about the importance of giving ourselves permission to experience the full spectrum of human emotions, which comes up on November 11th.
She reminds us that it's okay to feel sad, angry, or even scared sometimes, and that suppressing those emotions only makes them more powerful.
It's about acknowledging those feelings, allowing ourselves to feel them fully, and then letting them go when we're ready.
And this can be a really challenging concept, because so often we're conditioned to believe that we should always be positive and happy.
But she emphasizes that it's actually in those moments of vulnerability and authenticity that we connect most deeply with ourselves and others.
Exactly. And I think this leads to another really important theme in the book, the power of authenticity.
Throughout the book, she encourages us to embrace our individuality, speak our truth, and live in alignment with our values.
It's about being unapologetically ourselves, even if it means standing out from the crowd or challenging societal expectations.
And I think this is such an important message, especially in today's world where it's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others and feeling like we need to fit in.
It's about recognizing that our uniqueness is our strength, and that we have so much to offer the world by simply being ourselves.
She also talks about the importance of finding our tribe, which she refers to as nurturing relationships of integrity on August 2nd.
Yes. It's about surrounding ourselves with people who support our growth, challenge us to be our best, and celebrate our authentic selves.
It's about finding those soul-level connections that nourish and inspire us.
And this isn't about having a huge social circle or being popular. It's about having a few deep, meaningful relationships with people who we can truly be ourselves with.
And I think this is something that's particularly important as we get older. Our lives evolve, our priorities shift, and it's essential to nurture those connections that truly matter.
Absolutely. As our lives evolve, it's natural for our relationships to shift as well. And it's important to prioritize those connections that truly matter.
And she reminds us that creating those connections takes effort. It's about being intentional about reaching out, nurturing those relationships, and making time for the people who matter most.
And it's also about being willing to let go of relationships that no longer serve us, which can be a challenging but ultimately liberating experience.
It's about creating space in our lives for those connections that bring us joy, support, and a sense of belonging.
Exactly. And I think this ties into her message about the importance of letting go of what no longer serves us, which she talks about on August 13th.
She encourages us to release anything that's weighing us down, whether it's a negative thought pattern, a toxic relationship, or a limiting belief.
It's about creating space for new possibilities and embracing the freedom that comes with letting go.
And she reminds us that this is a process, not a one-time event. We may need to revisit the practice of letting go multiple times throughout our lives as we grow and evolve.
Absolutely. And she offers practical tips for navigating this process, such as journaling, meditation, and spending time in nature.
It's about creating a ritual or a practice that helps you release what no longer serves and open yourself to new possibilities. And this could involve something as simple as writing down what you want to let go of and then burning the piece of paper, or having a symbolic ceremony where you release those things into the universe.
It's about finding what works for you and making it a regular practice.
And she also encourages us to give ourselves permission to simply be, which comes up on December 15th.
That's a beautiful reminder that it's okay to slow down, rest, and recharge, and that we don't always need to be productive or striving for something.
It's about honoring our need for downtime and recognizing that stillness can be just as valuable as action.
And I think this is a particularly important message in our culture, where busyness is often glorified.
She's reminding us that it's okay to take breaks, prioritize self-care, and give ourselves permission to simply be. And she also talks about the importance of listening to our intuition, which she describes as giving your heart room to speak on December 4th.
It's about tuning into that inner wisdom that often guides us toward what's best for us, even if it doesn't always make logical sense.
And this can be a challenging practice, especially in a world that often values logic and reason over intuition.
But she encourages us to quiet our minds, connect with our hearts, and trust that inner voice that knows what's best for us.
And I think that's a great point to pause on. We've covered so much ground today, exploring all these incredible insights from a year of positive thinking. But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned and how we can apply these principles to our own lives. It's truly amazing how much wisdom Cyndie Spiegel packs into this book. It's like she anticipated all the little traps our minds can fall into.
It's true. And one of those traps, I think, is the pressure to do everything perfectly. But on December 13th, she reminds us about the power of forgiving ourselves. We're all human. We all make mistakes, and holding on to guilt and shame only holds us back.
It's about being kind to ourselves even when we mess up. I know that's something I personally struggle with.
Well, think of it this way. Would you berate a friend the way you sometimes berate yourself? Probably not. So why not extend that same compassion inward? Spiegel even suggests specific exercises like writing a letter of apology to yourself for past mistakes.
That's such a powerful idea. And it reminds me of her point on August 13th about surrender. It's not about giving up, but rather about accepting what we can't change and focusing our energy on what we can.
Exactly. This surrender concept can be really helpful when we're feeling overwhelmed or like we're constantly battling against the current. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is let go.
It's about trusting that the universe has a plan, even if we can't see it yet. And speaking of trusting on December 4th, Spiegel talks about listening to our intuition, that inner voice that often guides us toward what's best for us.
I love that she describes it as giving your heart room to speak. It's about tuning into that deeper wisdom that often gets drowned out by all the noise and distractions of our daily lives.
So how can someone who's maybe out of touch with their intuition start tapping back into that inner wisdom?
Start small. Create space for quiet reflection. Maybe it's 5 minutes of meditation each morning or taking a walk in nature without your phone. Notice those subtle nudges, those gut feelings, and start paying attention to what they're trying to tell you.
It's about learning to trust ourselves again. And I think that's a major theme that runs throughout this book, trusting ourselves, trusting the process, and trusting that we have the strength and resilience to navigate whatever life throws our way.
Absolutely. And I think that ties into her message on July 14th about setting healthy boundaries. It's about recognizing that it's okay to say no, to protect our time and energy, and to prioritize our own well-being.
Because saying yes to everything can leave us feeling depleted and resentful.
Exactly. And she reminds us that setting boundaries is not selfish. It's actually a form of self-respect. It's about honoring our own needs and limits and communicating those clearly to others.
And it's about recognizing that we can't please everyone. On February 11th, she reminds us that the world doesn't need more sameness. It's about embracing what makes us unique and not trying to fit into a mold that doesn't feel authentic.
I find that so liberating. It's permission to be fully ourselves, even if it means standing out from the crowd.
It's about celebrating our individuality and recognizing that our differences are our strengths. And, as we wrap up this deep dive into a year of positive thinking, I keep coming back to that idea of choice. Spiegel constantly reminds us that we have the power to choose our thoughts, our attitude, and ultimately how we experience the world.
That's the most empowering takeaway from this book, in my opinion. It's not about denying the challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It's about recognizing that even in the midst of difficulty, we have the power to choose hope, to choose joy, and to choose to focus on the good.
It's about recognizing that we are the creators of our own reality. And hey, if you're feeling inspired to start your own positivity journey, don't forget to check out Affirmifyjourney.com. They've got personalized affirmations based on your zodiac sign, plus tons more motivational content to help you cultivate that positive mindset.
It's a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to dive deeper into these concepts and start applying them to their own lives.
It's been such a pleasure exploring a year of positive thinking with you. And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked some inspiration and given you some practical tools for cultivating more positivity and joy in your own life. Remember, even small shifts in mindset can create ripple effects that transform your whole experience. So choose wisely, choose kindly, and choose to embrace the power of positive thinking.